Today we're going to be continuing our series on making dice with a clear resin outer shell. I'm going to be using a technique that I'm calling paint casting. I don't really know a better term for it, but that's pretty accurate. Remember last week when we made the blood spatter dice? They look really cool, and that involved just painting the outside of the inner dice. Well, this time we're going to paint the inside of them. Makes sense, it's the inside dice, right? It really is that simple. We're going to take this mold that has the shapes that go inside of our clear shells and paint them. It's great that they're blank because that gives us a canvas to paint on, in which I'm going to use jade green paint. It's one of my favorite paints right now, and Vallejo makes a really nice looking paint, so I thought I would go for this one. There is no rhyme or reason to how I'm painting this. Whatever pattern you want to do, go for it. If I had any painting skills whatsoever, I might try and do a pattern, but I'm just going with blots and splots of paints all over the inside of the mold. I think it's going to look really cool and very almost acidic or radioactive, and that's it. I'm done on the inside. On the actual top or cap, I'm going to do the same thing and just paint little bits wherever I feel like, hey, that part needed paint, and that's it, I'm done. You want to wait for about 24 hours to make sure the acrylic paint fully dries, but then after that we can start mixing up some resin. I'm going to use Envirotex light resin. It's pretty much what I always use. It's an equal part by volume, part A and part B resin, so I mix that up for about 5 minutes or until there are no streaks, and then to that resin I'm going to add some mint julep mad mica powder. This is a pretty close color to the jade green paint that we're using, and I want this to be kind of a background color. You won't really hardly see this mica color at all because we're going to add some extra colors on top of that because I think a dirty pour would look really good here. I'm going to use purple or violet and pitch black alcohol inks to make my colors. I think the green and purple combination is a classic color combo. The Joker would agree with me, though Batman would prefer the black inside of this dirty pour. I think it's going to look awesome with the jade green splotches as well. So I just pour some alcohol ink, just a few drops of each color on top of the green, and then I pour it inside of my molds as if I'm casting dice normally. There's nothing else that you have to do. However, I want this to be a majority purple and black, not so much green just being background. So after each pour, I add a little bit more alcohol ink so that it is nice and solid. You also don't have to worry about your dice becoming too soft from using too much alcohol ink because these are going to be inside of a clear outer shell. You can make a lot of mistakes on these inside dice. I cover both the bottom half of the cap slab mold as well as the top half in resin, and then pop any surface bubbles with the lighter, and then place the lid on top of the bottom half. It generally locks right into place using the rivets and keys and registration marks that have been made inside this mold, and then it's time for a quick 24-hour nap in the pressure pot for these inner dice to remove any extra bubbles. By the way, huge thanks again to Dicey Encounters for sending me his molds to use for these shell dice vids. Why don't we check in with him and say hi to Drew?
Ryan, it's like 3 a.m. Are we making another dice video? Okay. 5 more minutes.
Oh, Drew, you get your sleep. I'm a YouTuber. 3 a.m. is when I start work. But now it's time to pull these dice out of their molds since they've had enough time to cure. I was already loving the color and loving how the paint stuck to these things, and man, I gotta say, I'm really pleased with the combination of colors. The purple and the black and the kind of greenish background tie so well to that jade painting on the outside. I'm getting major Guardians of the Galaxy meets Splatoon vibes for these dice, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. But on to why these have to have their shells and why you can't normally paint cast something. See the paint on the outside there? If I try and scratch the resin, nothing happens. But if I scratch the paint at all, the paint starts to come up because there's no layer of resin protecting this paint. Normally when you cold cast something, it's with mica powders and it's not that big a deal. The resin will usually protect it. But with paint, that just can't happen. If you were to roll dice together like this or keep them in a bag, your dice will start to deform. Imagine these corners of this D6, which are pretty much entirely paint. If I do anything harsh to them at all, I'm going to lose the corners on these dice, messing with the balance and the look of them. So we got to put them in their outer shells now. Not a problem, we did this last week. Remember, the outer shells actually have the numbers because they help keep the inner shapes more centered inside of the shell dice. You can see the D6 here sits pretty well centered inside of the silicone molds. It's time to mix up another batch of resin. This time I'm not just going to leave it as clear resin, that's too boring. Let's add some gold liquid glitter to it. I made that in a DIY video before, and I think it would look really cool here with the teal and purple look. So just a few drops of that into the clear resin. We don't want it to be overpowering. We just want to see some of those gold sparkles inside of the shell if we ever take a close look at the dice. Now, before I pour this, I think it's a good idea to actually pop any surface bubbles on your resin before even pouring them for the shells, because if there's any bubbles that get stuck underneath the dice, you can get some seriously nasty voids. So it's good to pop any extra bubbles before we start filling up the molds. I fill up the outside molds about 2/3 of the way with resin and our sparkly gold mixture. This way, whenever we put the shapes down inside, there's already resin in the bottom and we don't have a chance of not getting any resin where it needs to go. With it filled up about 2/3 of the way, that's enough for the dice to be able to be pushed down inside, and resin will flow up, in, and out of the hole in the mold. That way, it ensures that there's resin completely encircling or surrounding all of these dice. You don't really have to worry about orientation because they're all the same shapes as the outer molds. They kind of have to only sit a certain way. Again, I make sure I pop any surface bubbles. Since we've already put so much work into this, we definitely don't want to get any voids if we can afford it. Go ahead and put it back in the pressure pot. I left mine in there for about 48 hours and now it is super hard and they look super duper good. As I was taking these dice out of these molds, I realized sometimes you just get lucky because these dice pulled out so well that I didn't feel like I needed to sand any of them. They look like they were fantastic. If you feel like you need to sand them, go for it. Or if you want to see how I have to do that in relation to these type of shell dice, go check out that blood spatter video that I made before. I do have to sand those and it shows a good way of how these molds work as a whole, as well as what you have to do to properly make sure that these dice look good when they come out. But they currently look good, not great, because they're not inked yet and we need to give them a color. I thought two colors that might look pretty good would be that same jade color or a nice gunmetal silver. And I'm going to try something new on YouTube. I want you to choose the color. Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below what color you think these should be inked and I will read them right away. Oh, and wow, we already have the results in? That's crazy. Every single person commented saying they wanted gold inking. It's not anything I wanted on my dice. I definitely am not a gold inking person, but you know, if that's what the people want, who am I to deny the people the gold inking that they deserve? So I go ahead and paint all of these numbers up with a nice Vallejo gold. This is a really bright gold as opposed to the Retributor armor that I normally use from Citadel, and I think it pops here a little bit better on these dice. And I'm so glad I figured out this paint casting method, and I'm glad I have this skill that I can now share with all of you.
You were fired for being late. You look horrible.
So do you. If I look bad, you look bad.
What does that mean? Am I going crazy? I must have dreamt this. This can't be true. Oh, but it's true. But what are you doing in the mirror? We're the same person. Don't you recognize me? Look at me and know it to be true.
Stop it.
But you're too weak on your own. Stop it. You can't do what I do. I am the master of transitions. But together, we can share our skills. Together, we will be unstoppable.
Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and for those of you who stick around through my dumb skits. But if you haven't heard of Skillshare, it's an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes so that you can learn new skills, deepen your passions, and be a creator who gets lost in creativity. They have so many different class topics, anything from resin work to voice acting to game development if that interests you, and now they have subtitles in a bunch of different languages on all of their videos. And the best part is there's no ads, so once you start learning something, you can really stay focused and just flow wherever your creativity takes you. One of my favorite classes as of late has been Board Game Design 101 by Ben Panter. He's a professor and he explained things so well and so thoroughly. If you like my content, you'll definitely like his stuff. So why don't we help each other out a little bit here, because the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so that you can start exploring your creativity today. Speaking of creativity, let's get back to these sick looking dice. And I do mean sick because these things came out looking so dang good. It's still weird to see dice without my logo on them that I've created, but man, am I pleased with this look. I really like the tealish jade green of the Vallejo color. I've been using that on miniatures a lot lately, and I also use gold on those minis, so I knew that this color combination would work. However, I hadn't tried the purple and black with it. I may need to adjust things on my minis because this color combo is really, really good looking. I'm getting a lot of No Man's Sky vibes out of this too. You can see how well centered the cube is inside these shell dice. Having having those numbers on the outside really helps with that. And if you look at it from the side, it actually kind of looks like the gold numbers are holding this little cube inside of the shell up. I think it looks really awesome. Even if they are slightly off center, that doesn't matter because it's all made out of resin, so it's not going to affect the balance at all. But, you know, looking good is only one thing. They also have to sound pretty good. Man, they even look good while they're sounding so good. I didn't get lucky enough to get a nat 20 during my test rolls, but I also didn't get unlucky enough to get a nat 1, so I won't be complaining anytime soon. Of all the dice that came out of this set, I gotta say, either the D8 or the D6 are my absolute favorite. Let me know in the comments down below which of the dice from this set are your favorite, because for some reason they all look so different. I just like them all for their own reasons, but man, that D8 is really looking nice, and D8s are rarely my favorites in a set. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you might want to see some more videos like this in the future. Like the video if you like it. If you disliked it, apparently the dislikes are going away on YouTube, but I still want to know about those, so just comment dislike. That helps me with the algorithm anyway. Thank you again for watching. I hope that you all have a fantastic day.